government, US government, UK, EU, IMF. What do you think the Western international financial institutions and governments, what action should they take to engage this government or try to take actions within the rules which you laid out? So bring about some progress.
My basic view is be as tough as possible. The Russians will be soft, so I don't think that we need to worry that the Russians will outwit the West. I think it was James who pointed out very rightly that Putin just can't stand Yanukovych for so many different reasons. So if Putin makes a deal with Yanukovych, it will be enormously costly. So it's nothing that he would like to do. So the only thing I see reasonable is that the IMF actually provides money, and then Yanukovych really has to do it. Because the IMF has good rules, they focus on a few major issues, like gas price increases, like control of the budget deficit. And the IMF is the only organization I see can do something. I'm afraid the US government and Canada cannot do much more than clarifying what they think about the situation, that I think that they should economically, I can't see many leverage.
There's no question, in this community we represent, we meet with the IMF all the time. We've been trying to tell them, do not put any more money in Ukraine until they fully meet the conditions that she's laid out. And of course, we wish they would broaden their perspective to include more of the conditions than what they've included, because they say they're promoting economic development, and then we find things done in Ukraine like grain export controls that don't promote economic development, but the IMF says, well, we can't get involved in that. So we do hope that the Canadian government and all the other governments that participate in the IMF will encourage the IMF, not just in Ukraine, but in other countries, to be tough, to have strong conditions, and to not give in on those conditions early down the road to help bring about positive economic change in Ukraine and other countries.
I agree.
So then, Zenon, one prediction from you. Do you really think Ukraine's going to open up their energy and let's say 5 major international energy companies that have hundreds of millions of billions to put into Ukraine? Do you think that will happen yet this year?
Well, I certainly hope so. As I said at the end, for Ukraine right now, it's a critical stage when it comes to energy development. If they don't do it right now, you can kiss goodbye Ukrainian energy independence. So I hope so.
I've been in meetings where ExxonMobil and Chevron make it very clear they have all the money for energy development in Ukraine and Ukraine needs. But they're not going in for 2 years or 5 years. They're going in for 20, 30, 40 years. They have to know that the environment is stable. They're ready to get in there. They're eager to get in there. We've got to do everything we can to encourage the government of Ukraine to open up the energy sector. International companies are ready. They're able. They're willing. And they have everything Ukraine needs except licenses. Okay, let's open up the questions then. Mr. Ukrainian, Canadian attorney friend, your first question.
Thanks very much. Just on the energy side, we acted with the majors that you mentioned, and the tenders for the production sharing agreements that we're talking about, the uses of shale gas field have now been open, and I know that we're certainly starting to work on that. So that's encouraging that this is the first time that the majors have been involved in this sector in this kind of way, because the Ukrainians can't do it. They just don't have the technology, they don't have the resources. And that's a good lesson, is that this government has taken a policy decision, that to invite in major international companies under basically no-raid clause in order to develop these sectors. In fact, interestingly enough, among big Western companies, there's been less corporate rating under this government than there has been under the previous Yushchenko government. So that's an encouraging trend. A question for Anders. Excellent presentation at all. As always, as good a summary of a bad situation as I've seen recently. And it is rare. And it's the devaluation issue is something that can perhaps interested in your comments on that. And I'd also be interested in your comments on the banking sector. We're now into a second wave of problems with Ukrainian banks, with foreign-owned subsidiaries of Ukrainian banks this time because their parent companies are having pressure on their balance sheets and capitalization ratios back home under Basel III, and with all this nonsense going on with their sovereign debt exposures. And they're starting to scale back in Central and Eastern Europe. Ukraine is no exception. Swedes have already pulled out. The Italians are scaling back. And what do you see happening? Are you looking at a consolidation among Ukrainian banks, taking over those assets, or a collapse, or something else? Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Well, these things are happening in the banking sector, and the general picture is that the state banks are growing massively, and the Russian banks and the West European banks are withdrawing quite fast. So, before the crisis, 40% of the banking assets were owned by West European banks. Last I looked, it was down to 27%, while the Russian share that was negligible before is now 11%. And the one biggest bank remains Privatbank. So we are essentially seeing a few crooked banks, Ukrainian crooked banks, Ukrainian state banks, and Russian banks, and the Western banks are becoming ever more and more exposed. So this is of course going. Well, I don't see it as so dangerous. I thought it was more dangerous last year if there would have been a serious euro crisis earlier. Now the European banking deleveraging has got so far. So I don't think it's such a big problem any longer. I expected worse problems with the European banks than we have seen.
Okay, next question.
I'm Aslund. I'm Professor Emeritus at the Richard Ivey School of Business. And I also am of a Ukrainian background, and over the past 20 years or so, I've been repeatedly going to Ukraine and lecturing in business to the business schools of Ukraine, in Kudelia in particular recently. And I've been watching with fascination the whole investment climate of Ukraine. I've gone to so many different conferences where I've heard presentations from, especially from government various personnel keep talking about the potential of Ukraine and why we should be investing in Ukraine. And the potential of Ukraine is enormous and fascinating, and it's quite clear. I didn't want to waste my time, your time, enumerating that there's fantastic potential. But at the same time, the whole country's no material investment has really occurred. I mean, it's trivial. We heard from the Minister that the trade between Canada and is $200 billion. You know, that's a joke. That's not serious. But if you look at the investment flows, they're trivial. And the big point that is always missed is that investment and money is always concerned about one big factor, and that is risk. And what's happening in Ukraine, and has been happening repeatedly, is that risk is being incredibly high, and that has basically driven and kept all of investment, or kept investment to a very, very small level. So until risk is eliminated, and I see risk in many different ways, the confiscation, the raiding. I mean, I've seen repeated cases of this, and this drives potential, it just destroys it completely. Let me get to a question, though, which I wanted to pose. One of the topics that has been discussed, and this has got to do with political risk, is the Timoshenko case, which is so blatant and obviously political persecution. However, at the core of this is a topic which has got to do with gas pricing. And supposedly the Timoshenko signed an agreement which was unfavorable. So here's the question, and I guess trying to follow this, sometimes it's hard to sort out, and it's good to be well informed. As I understand it, the gas formula that she agreed to was an index formula that was similar to formulas that the European nations face, something like a market type of price. Could you comment on whether that is true? Because I think this is interesting. And the second question that I've got in this regard is, I didn't quite catch whether how much industrial prices are discounted, because that is often a source of corruption if you have discounted pricing for one sector, which is that taking advantage. I didn't quite catch that from your presentation. So this question, I guess, is presented potentially, and anybody else wants to comment.
On the industrial price for gas, I guess the price for industry is actually the price of the imported gas from Russia. So that's the $11–12 1,000 cubic feet. For the consumers, for the population, the price is, as I said, 1/6 of that, so somewhere around $1.80 to $2 per 1,000 cubic feet. And obviously there's politics involved here, because elections are coming, and he's not going to increase the price to the population to a market price, because then definitely nobody would vote for him or his party or whatever. When it comes to kickbacks there, I'm not sure. You know, it's a very tricky industry. There's a whole bunch of rumors and a whole bunch of sort of hidden agendas how apparently these systems work. The system for oil is much more developed, and you have now monthly auctions for crude oil in Ukraine. I mean, it's not totally open and transparent, but very close. And the price that you actually get at the auction is maybe 10% lower than the world price. So it has moved quite closely and works quite well. In previous administrations, the problem was that you had people coming and buying some oil, and then some people were selling, and then what happened was in a couple of weeks you couldn't find the money, you couldn't find the oil. So it was a total disaster. That was another form of risk that you didn't want to pay or sell the oil, because you never knew if you were going to get the funds. Right now, the agency that holds the auction guarantees and is responsible for payment and for delivery of the oil. So there's a very good guarantee for that. Gas is still very much complicated. On the issue of Yulia Tymoshenko and how the contract was signed and what sort of formula, I mean, I don't know, I've never seen the contract, and as you heard, even the president didn't see it when she went to sign it, so I'm not sure exactly, but the rumor is that it was apparently set up the same way as the European Union's formula. However, as you can see, a lot of the countries in the European Union do get discounts and do get better price, but Ukraine obviously is so far not successful to do it. But also maybe.
Let me answer on the investment climate question. What is happening now is that we have 4 big groups: the Yanukovych family, the Peterson group, the Akhmetov group, and Privat group. And they have pretty much a monopoly on big enterprises in Ukraine. And last year, the stock market fell by 40% in Ukraine because the worst performing market in the world. Why? Because these enterprises that Peterson and Akhmetov have taken over are suddenly making massive losses when prices are high. Why? Because of transfer pricing. So they are taking out the money to Cyprus, which has several advantages. One is they don't pay taxes. It's the middle class that pay taxes, not the middle class. And then they can press the exchange rate downwards, making Ukraine cheaper for them. And they are pressing down the prices of enterprises so that they can grab more public or private assets at a lower price. Because we are now seeing a massive corporate rally from these people's side. So they have no interest in a better investment climate. On the contrary, this is the asset grab of the early 90s that we are back to. and they are just happy to push it down. They are not going for IPOs now, but rather to take as many assets. So all the state assets are finished. The electricity assets are going very fast now, at very low prices. The mines also. Perhaps things will change then, but I doubt it. This is really a predatory environment, and therefore what happens to foreign investors, Tom P., that's not very possible.
We're going to close here. A quick question, quick answer. We're going to have to close. Yes.
What is the danger of default? This is a question for us. Sovereign default.
It exists, it surely exists, but it's a matter of massive mismanagement of the public finances. You have to refinance the various loans that are coming due. It should be perfectly possible. So this is simply an example of extraordinary mismanagement of state finances in the small rather than in the big.
Quickly.
Yes. My name is Gerald Zenon, Canadian Congress in China. I'd like to do a quick commentary on a sector that was not addressed by the panelists, and that relates to the agricultural sector, in as much as it affects rural areas in a significant way, and as much as there's a very active debate going on with respect to the removal of the 50-year moratorium as private sales of agricultural lands, and as much also agriculture in terms of its potential, its scope in Ukraine is also very much intertwined with external policies in respect to agriculture, trade with Russia, and also especially with the highly subsidized European Union. Just a quick comment on where you see this going and what's the potential of agriculture relative to energy and other sectors.
The more numerous is the best, but I can take Ukraine last year had its best harvest ever. Ukraine last year, or this season, exports probably 27 million tons of grain out of a harvest of 55 million tons or so. And this is as it should be, that agriculture is taking off massively. That's where you have new interesting companies. But they are extremely afraid of a new law on private sales of land, which most probably will mean not really that, but a substantial nationalization of land into the hands of Yanukovych family. And therefore, people are very worried. We are now seeing a large number of big companies with 250,000 or 500,000 hectares of land, but they don't own this. They have leases for 5 years mostly, and they can lose all the land, but that is counted as a to them. And the market assumption is that this is really a matter of how good relation each major owner has with the Yanukovych family, so that some will lose and some will keep the land. And this is the nature of property rights in Ukraine today, I'm afraid.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up. I don't think we can take one more. Can't take any more, right?
No, I think we're shot. One more. Over. I think you need a caffeine and a sugar fix.
We'll get the caffeine going.
And then come back for the wrap-up, which is a blockbuster session. I don't think I want to cut that down.
Let's just remember as we close that there's basically two business communities in Ukraine. There's one Aslund, which has been talking about which he calls the Yanukovych family and all the oligarchs. But then there's the international business community, and there's the good Ukrainian businessmen that like to operate under international standards. We've got to support the international business community. We've got to support the good Ukrainians, and we're working with every Ukrainian business that wants to meet international standards to help get them Western cover. They need Western cover. They need Western political insurance. They need loans from the EBRD. They need your export-import bank involved. They need the business of Canada to stand up for your businesses. They need a cover in case they get in trouble. We need to be able to go to our ambassador. They need to go to the EBRD, the IFC, some import bank, some political risk insurance company. We've got to support for the people of Ukraine. They need jobs. They need good jobs. And there's thousands of outgoing young Ukrainians working in business in Ukraine. That's our future. That's what's going to move Ukraine forward. So we need everybody to support the business community and fight for their rights to create a prosperous Ukraine, which we all support. So thank you very much for listening.